first I would like to say thank you for all for joining. I had to, Hannah, who's doing my filming for me, also helps with our social media, and I actually had to call her last week because I was looking through our Instagram and was noticing how many Latin American fans we have, and it was quite amazing, really. So we really appreciate everything you're doing. It's actually, we notice it on our end, and so for us to give a little bit of time to you is really an honor, and we appreciate that opportunity. So thank you for that. My name is, again, Brandon Starks. I'm the executive director of what is now called the Brumos collection, and we are located in Jacksonville, Florida, which is Northeast Florida. We have pretty much a world-class car collection, and have for a while. Believe it or not, there is a car collection ranking system, and we've ranked in the top 40 car collections in the world. And so we're quite honored about that. We began many years ago, and I think it's important to tell you a little bit of our history. Brumos actually began as Brundage Motor Cars Corporation in 1953 in Miami, Florida, by a man named Hubert Brundage. And Hubert was a race car. He owned hardware stores, but as his hobby, he loved racing, and he figured he could race less expensively. He could save some money if he actually had a car dealership or was involved in the automotive world. So he purchased the distributorship for Volkswagen cars for the southeastern United States, and also had a dealership. Ultimately, because of Jacksonville's port, he relocated to Jacksonville in around 1955 and took on other marques, one of them being Porsche. We were one of the original 6 importers of Porsche cars to the United States. We serviced the southeastern United States, and we were also a Porsche dealer. We signed our original Porsche dealer agreement in 1959.
Wow.
And operated as Brumos Porsche until 2016. Our history is long and full of lots of stories, so it's a little bit hard to stay, in a way that's easy to follow. But we've always been locally owned and operated, and then we've always had owners that were very passionate about racing. The dealership's business, starting with Brundage, was a way to initially fund their racing aspirations. So Hubert died in 1964, and a man named Peter Gregg ended up buying the dealerships and the business from his wife. Peter was a local naval intelligence officer who also loved racing, and he took over the stores at that point. One of the significant parts about that is when Peter was in the Navy, he used to fly into aircraft carriers and fly over naval bases. And there was one ship in particular, the USS Forrestal, that he always admired the hull number on the boat, the number that you would see on the flight deck or on the side of the ship. And the USS Forrestal, and that was number 59. And Peter liked the way the number looked in the battleship numbers, and liked the number itself. And so he made that the Brumos racing number. First debuted in 1967, and we've used it ever since. So if you see a lot of cars with the number 59 today, or 58, that is the reason why. It's traditionally been our number.
Like the one you have on the side, right?
Yes, right here. Can you see that car in the shot?
Yeah, perfect.
And then you also notice that car is a red, white, and blue color. We first debuted that livery, which we know today is our Brumos livery, in 1972. But it features what we call, you have your racing stripes on the hood, and then we call these our Brumos racing sweeps. And the reason we came up with that livery is because at the time, most photography was done in black and white, and it was too hard to tell. I don't know if you could see the orange cars. We were driving orange cars prior to.
Okay.
And it was too hard to identify those cars in black and white photography. And so we redesigned our logo.
Changed to white and the red and blue
Red,
stripes.
white, and blue. So you'll see that on a lot of cars and around. So as we look around, I just wanted to kind of explain a few of the kind of specific things that you may see or wonder about while we're here.
Okay.
And to that, the name Brumos is back in the 50s when Mr. Brundage owned his businesses, they would communicate using a teletype machine or a telex machine, and you would almost use a ticker name or a shortened name. And so Brumos is a shortening of Brundage Motors.
Okay.
And so that is how we get our name. I will tell you, I was the general manager of our Porsche store before I did this. And it was amazing how many people would come in claiming to be close personal friends of Mr. Brumos when they wanted a deal on a car. And it was always a good way to know that that may
there's no
not be
Mr. Brumos.
that may not be the case.
Correct.
So the lineage went on. Peter Gregg committed suicide in 1980. His wife of 9 days, Deborah, took over the dealerships throughout the 80s and then sold them in 1991 to a man named to two men, Bob Snodgrass, who ran the dealerships for her, and a local businessman named Dan Davis. And Dan and Bob owned the dealerships until Bob passed away in 2007. Dan retained everything after that, and then sold to the Fields Automotive Group, the dealerships anyway, in 2016. The reason that's significant is because from when we passed our 935, during that time we amassed a collection of cars, and it's changed over time. The first one being our 935 that you'll see, that was actually part of the dealership purchase when Dan and Bob bought the dealerships. But starting in 1997, we built what we called our original Brumos Museum. And that was about a 10 or 12,000 square foot room attached to our race shop behind our dealerships. And it was just a place to store our private collection. Dan Davis laughs today because he said when he and Bob walked in that room, he said, "How in the heck are we ever going to fill this place up?" And 8 months later, he told Bob, "You have to stop buying cars. We're busting at the seams." And that's kind of the way it's been ever since. The collection itself has kind of ebbed and flowed over time. Currently, we have approximately 65 cars in our collection. Here at our museum, we display about 40 on the showroom floor where we are at any given time, split into two sections. Half of it is Porsche. We've always raced Porsches, and it's very much in our blood. So it's fitting that half of the collection is that. And then one of Dan's other passions are very early open wheel race cars. Our oldest car is an 1894 Peugeot that competed in the world's first sanctioned automobile race from Paris to Rouen in 1895. About 100 cars tried to qualify for it. About 32 finished. Ours finished ninth. And you can barely call it a race because they did stop for lunch in the middle of it. But that's what makes it a uniquely French experience. They were still trying to figure it out. But those cars range from 1894 and they'll go all the way up through 1963. And they kind of follow the evolution of the dual overhead cam motor. And that motor has made a significant impact on high performance cars and automobiles to this day. And what you see is fascinating because you're looking at periods of time where people were inventing new ideas and concepts. So rather than necessarily tweaking, they were inventing things that never existed before, and it's really quite fascinating.
And you can see that around the shop in every different model of car. As well as another thing, yeah. As well as the history of, sorry to interrupt you, of Brumos. No. You can see it in the pictures on the background and in the trophies you have on the side. So there's a lot of history to cover over here.
Yes, and so, you know, it really is a lot to take in at one time, and I try to keep it flowing to keep it interesting. But, you know, we mentioned the trophies. These are all trophies that we have won as an organization, and including, we do have our Rolex 24-hour trophy here on that's the nearest one I see, the most significance. But they span, you know, 60 years, and we're really quite proud of them. Our last time to win the 24 Hours of Daytona was in 2009. We won overall in a Porsche Riley prototype car, a Daytona prototype. Okay. And then in 2011, we went back to GT racing, which we've kind of traditionally been known for. And so I'll show you our GT car here in a moment. But this was our last championship car. We won the 2011 Grand Am Championship in a 997 GT3 Cup car. We have two. There's another one in the workshop that we could show you. But this would be what would have been the most recent car we would have raced professionally. You know, one of the things that make us so proud of Porsche is how much of a real car they are. People have varying degrees of knowledge of racing. But when you see a Porsche out on the track, it is a true Porsche. When you see a Corvette or Camaro out on a track, It is a purpose-built tube frame race car that's built by an engineering house that they make to look like whatever car it is, and they brand it that. So it's pretty amazing that Porsche can build these cars on the same assembly line as any car that you could buy in a showroom, and they can go out and be successful. Now, it is always a battle with a Porsche, but they really are amazing.
That's the Porsche way. That's the Porsche way.
It is. They win, and they do it the right way. So with that, that was as brief as I could be on our history and still give people some context. Are we good to maybe move on to a car or two?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if anyone has a question about this specific car,
the facility,
or the facility.
Well, I forgot to mention the facility itself. The facility itself, we have about 35,000 square feet. It was built for this. Originally, it started as when we sold the dealerships, we needed a place to put our cars. And then Dan, about a year into the 3-year project, decided, you know what, we need to share these with other people. So we've made quite a few changes, including adding a whole second floor mezzanine, all the display pieces. We have kiosks at every car so that when you do come visit, you can explore the facts and information about the car while you're here. And we try to make it very user-friendly.
Right. I remember that. That's a digital kiosk that you swipe around and see the history of that car specifically.
So I will point that out here. And so this is how, if you were here, you would experience visiting one of our cars. And so what it'll do is it'll give you the name of the car or what year the car is. So this is for our 550 Spider, our 1955 550 Spider. Each car has 3 individual stories at least, so that you can learn kind of the human component of the car. They all have a photo gallery dedicated to that specific car.
Excellent.
And then a specifications page. So, if you want to know how fast a car is, or, what kind of transmission it has, you can learn all that in our specs sheet, which is kind of a neat way to do it. For more technical people, yes. So we did that, and we did it through a touch screen because our hope is to engage younger people, and we figure most young people engage with the world through a touch screen now. I don't know if anyone's
everyone using iPads or iPhones, for example.
It was very startling. I went to Le Mans the year before last, and we went to Paris, and we stopped at the Louvre. And if you go in to see the Mona Lisa these days, what you see are a bunch of phones with the Mona Lisa's face on
a big line, just to see the Mona Lisa.
Exactly. A huge line, and then a bunch of phones. They're looking at Mona Lisa through their phone, which they could have done from home. But that's the reality of what we're doing today. So we try to design a system that people, that speaks to people the way that they're used to engaging with the world.
Yeah. That's the new way to engage. That's the truth.
So with that, I did want to give you kind of we've had this car at Porsche Cars North America headquarters for about 6 months.
We saw it, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, you were with Ray. That's right.
Yeah, correct. On a tour that Willem did with all the Porsche clubs from Latin America. And we saw it. They had it over there. The first car you see when you enter the museum is that one.
Yes. So we are glad to have it back. I know our plan is to do a whole special on this car.
Another event, correct.
Where we can maybe have it run and get it on the dyno or get it out for everyone to see. But this car is significant to us, for those who don't know, or it's significant for itself. This car raced in the Venezuelan Grand Prix.
That's why it's important to us also. That's why we need another event for that.
So anyway, we're very proud to have it here. This is our second oldest Porsche. It's a 1955. It's serial number 30. And I'll leave a little mystery there, but I just wanted to give you a little proof of life shot.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing car. That's a one they sent from Stuttgart on a plane directly to Caracas.
Yes. That was the first Porsche ever airlifted to a race. It flew on a DC-6 from Stuttgart to Caracas.
Correct. When you go to the Porsche South America headquarters in Miami. That's the picture they have in the lobby.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that picture of the 550 getting on the plane. It says Operation Caracas.
I need to go down and see that. Funny story is they borrowed that car from us when the 981 Boxster came out, and they sent it to Birmingham for an advertising shoot, and they rolled a Boxster right off the truck and into the Spider.
Wow.
So every time we're a little hesitant to let it go anywhere these days.
So that car never stops getting history, so it keeps going on.
Yes. So we'll work a little bit of a different direction this time than we did last, and try to freshen it up.
Okay.
At this point, it's a good time for questions over what we've covered to this point, and then I'll get going.
Let me ask, ¿alguien tiene alguna pregunta? Does anyone have a question to ask? I think they're speechless with the collection.
Okay, that's good then. That makes it easy.
Let's go. Yeah, I have a question for you. What car do you drive?
What car do I drive?
Yeah.
My daily driver is a pickup truck. My wife has a Cayenne, and then I have a GT4 at home that I drive when I feel like having fun.
Great.
Nice pick.
Yeah, that was the hard part because, I used to get a demo when I worked at the dealership, so I would just kind of pick out whatever one I wanted to drive. And so then when it came to the point where I had to pick one out, it made things difficult. So,
Correct.
So I have my GT4 and I love it, and I think I'm happy right now.
Yeah, that's a great car. So you have over here a 964 that's a turbo, right?
Yes, this is a 964 turbo. We would have run this car from 1991 to 1993. During this era, we were the North American factory team for Porsche. So we worked hand in hand with the factory to run the cars. Hurley Haywood, Walter Roll, Hans Stuck all would have driven one of our two cars. We ran two cars in that series, a 58 car and a 59 car. We won the championship twice, 91 and 93. And it was especially significant to us because it was our first return back to real professional racing after Peter Gregg died. When Deborah Gregg was here, she raced some, but not to the same in the same capacity that Peter Gregg would have raced. And so it kind of went by the wayside. So when Dan and Bob purchased the dealerships in 91, one of the first things they wanted to do was go back to professional racing. And this is what we did it in.
They're asking a question over here. It says, back in the 70s, who was a better driver, Peter Gregg or Hurley Haywood?
I would say Hurley was probably the most talented driver. Peter was the best team owner and driver. So they had different skill sets. Hurley could drive anything, and that's still the case to this day. You can hop in the car with Hurley now, and it is terrifying. And he's got one arm on the windshield and isn't thinking anything of it. But I don't think we would have been as successful if Peter hadn't been so detail-oriented and picky and difficult. It was those types of things that set the car up to win.
They complemented each other.
Yes, yes, they did. And that's what made them such a good team.
That's what I was going to say. That's what makes a team. And another question is that 964 Cup, this one, it ran on the Cup, like the GT3 Cup for the 964?
This would have been the Supercar series. So it was a 964, I forget what the actual, I think it was almost like a 965 is what they called it. But it ran the Bridgestone Supercar series. I guess it would, I don't know if they would have classified it as a cup car or not, because it's more of a stock type situation that's originally, and then,
another question, but on the museum, is it open for visits? Do you have to make an appointment to go in, or what?
We are when we're open and not under a pandemic. We are open a few days a week. So when we reopen, we'll be open Wednesday through Saturdays. We'll prefer people to buy tickets online ahead of time, just so we know how to pace people through. Because what you don't want is to get here and not be able to see anything because there's a big crowd around you. We prefer people be able to look. But yeah, you can buy tickets online or come in. You can buy them ahead of time. If you have, sometimes people have a group of folks that come through, and we set that up on their own and try to make it special for them. So
perfect. Yes. That's what we're gonna do. Most of us are gonna visit it. And what do you have over there on the getting on the
transporter?
Yeah.
This is a Porsche 910. So it was from 1967. This car actually placed third at Monza in 1967. At this time in Porsche's history, they were kind of cranking through these prototype cars pretty quickly. The 910 was their first real prototype cars with the smaller wheels, the lower profile center of gravity. It would have been based off, what would have been like the Carrera 6 at the time. But it's a completely fiberglass car, purpose-built race car.
Yeah, it's a lighter car.
Wow. Very, very, very light. After this car raced at Monza, the short wheelbase made things a little bit tough. They went on to become very successful hill climb cars, and that's what they're most known for. But it's a good car in the evolution of the other Porsche prototypes that we have here. So you would have gone from this to, say, the 907, from the 907 to the 908, then you finally get to the 917, and then we have our 962 that would have come after that. So it's kind of a good transition. The interesting thing with this is it is on our Porsche factory transporter. So the bus that it's on, its name is Buster. It is a 1968 Porsche transporter. It's actually a Mercedes-Benz chassis, but it served the Porsche factory team from 1968 to 1988. And some of the most famous cars ever driven would have been transported by Buster all over the world.
Wow. Yeah, remember from last visit, we spoke. There's only two, right? Two buses like
There's
that.
only two. There's only two buses like this in the world, and the other one currently is in Europe. And believe it or not, this is the one vehicle in this building that cannot move at the moment. Because we have our kiosks, all of the floors are data floors. They're raised, and the bus was too heavy to put on the floor. So we actually brought the bus in, put it up on jack stands, and then built the floors around it. So Buster's here for a while.
It's
one of our favorite
history. Yeah, everyone's favorite is that. I remember from last visit, everyone wanted to talk about Buster.
Buster is a crowd pleaser. Believe it or not, and what's ironic about it is that Buster is probably one of the best running vehicles we have. This thing can sit for a year and you can start it right up, and other than the cloud of black smoke, it
runs perfectly, smoothly.
It runs perfectly, yes.
I remember you had, I think on the back door, it has signatures from race cars, drivers, and.
So one of the things we tried to do is keep track of some of the significant people that would have kind of competed with Buster, but you have Alwyn Springer, Peter Schutz, Hurley. Let's see here. Klaus Bischoff, Manfred Janke, Brian Redmond. So a lot of the names from Porsche all ran their cars out of this little bus, and we're real proud of it. And we kind of use it for our old driving suit and uniform storage at the moment.
Okay, but uniforms used at race, so they have history also.
Yes. I mean, we have, this one's pretty neat. Hold on, let me hop up here real quick. This would have been one of Peter Gregg's suits.
Wow.
What I love about driving suits is it's a little bit like going to a wax museum or Planet Hollywood. You can tell how tiny these people really were.
The people are getting bigger then.
Yeah, we are getting bigger. So that is Buster. It's our transporter, and we're really, really quite proud of it. There are models of it out there. If anyone ever, if you keep your eyes peeled,
I had seen a few, and Buster is a great part of your collection. Even though it's a Mercedes, it's a great part.
I guess you got to work with what you got. And
correct.
So, one of my other favorite cars here, and since we're by it, is this is actually a 1975 911 RSR, but it won the 24 Hours of Daytona in 1977.
Wow.
The interesting story of this car is that in 1977, Porsche was coming out with the 935, the turbocharged motors. But they had just finished work on developing the turbocharger in November of the year prior. So November of '76, they finished the turbochargers, and they plan to run them in a 24-hour race in January. So Hurley, this is where Hurley was really quite smart. He did not want to run in a car that had the turbochargers because it was an unproven technology. And so he found a team. This one was locally based here in Jacksonville that was running a naturally aspirated car. And so they actually qualified dead last. After qualifying, Hurley's co-drivers told him that they did not want to drive the car at night. And so with that, they started the race. Things were going pretty well. After about 3 hours, the turbocharger started overheating in the other Porsches, and this one started gaining ground.
Wow.
Hurley ended up running an 8-hour stint at Daytona at night in this car because the others would not drive in the dark. During the longer pit stops, he would get out of the car and go into like a little screened area in the pit and put on one of the other drivers' helmets, and then go back and get in the car and to make them believe
there
that
was
it was
another
the other driver. Yeah, he said that he didn't think they bought it, but the fact that he wasn't running off the road and he was trying, they didn't say anything.
He did it anyway.
But
they're asking, is this a 2.5 or 3.0 engine?
I think it's a 3-liter, but let me just check. I get rusty when I don't do this. Yeah, it's a 3-liter.
3-liter, okay.
Yeah, high butterfly 3-liter. But these cars, if you haven't heard one of these RSRs run, there is nothing like it. It's the most amazing sounding Porsche, I think, in the world. There's all kinds of magnesium that they use in the motor, which makes it real light, but
the sound of this one specifically,
it just sounds like the Tasmanian devil. I mean, it's just the grumble, and it wants to rev high, and it's just a really amazing motor. It's my favorite.
So it must have been amazing to see it run when it did.
Yes, I always wish I had gotten to. But the other kind of funny part, they were so slow, they called themselves Team Snail. And but anyway, they ultimately, because of the car failures and Hurley drove such a great race, they ended up winning the race by quite a bit. And we ended up acquiring the car later on, but we're really proud of this one.
Excellent. What do you have on the, are we going to go to the side or to the ones you have in front?
Where would you guys like to go? I'll let you guide me a little bit.
Okay, I think we can go in front.
We can go to the 962 or 17, or we can stay with the 911s.
We can do a brief one. We can go with this one, with the Golf.
You want to go with 917K? Okay.
Yeah.
This is one of our newest additions, or actually, we've had the car for a couple years now, about 2 years, but we didn't tell anyone we had it. So when we opened our grand opening, we made the announcement that this was actually part of the collection. It's a 1970 Porsche 917K. This car was used primarily as a test car by Porsche. They were testing aero setups for 1970 Le Mans. After which, one of the drivers, Joe Siffert, bought the car personally. He drove to his birthday party in the car, and then ultimately the car led his funeral procession. And there were 50,000 people at his funeral in 1971. He passed away actually in a car accident at Brands Hatch in England. But he was quite the celebrity. But anyway, it was his personal car. And his wife kept the car for a few years in case their son ever decided he wanted to go racing, and which he didn't. And we were fortunate enough to get the car after a pretty extensive kind of restoration. But the reason we picked number 70 was because Joe Siffert and Simone Siffert were married in 1970, and it was significant to them. And we felt like because it didn't have a racing history, we could pick whatever number we wanted.
We talked last time about this one. It's amazing that the way the seat it's like, I don't know, on a side. It's not vertical. It's horizontal.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's reclined. It's it's really strange, and so the way it sits, it's at an angle, like you say. So your head would have to constantly be banging on the back firewall. I can't imagine, kind of what the noise of that would be like over time.
And the chief note, it's like a Carrera GT one. It looks like a Carrera.
Yeah,
GT.
so they used the, gosh, is that a rosewood or a maple? In all their early kind of supercars and race cars, they used the wood shift knob to keep the heat down. So when they came out with the Carrera GT, they used that as an inspiration for that car's shifter. But it's really hard to describe what it must have been like to be in this car going 230 miles an hour at night, or in the fog, or in the heat. You have fuel tanks
next to a fuel tank
next to the driver. The frame of the car is not very substantial. It's amazing not more people didn't die in the that you can see here.
Yeah, it's a very simple
tube frame. They would have, some of the sections in this car would have been pressurized so they could check for cracks. These cars would have weighed about 1,750 pounds. They made about 650 horsepower. This was the kind of the pinnacle of race cars in its time, in a lot of ways in history.
Yeah, I remember from last time, this is the car that, this is one of the cars that were used at the movie.
Yes. So there's a movie, Le Mans, Steve McQueen made. And for that movie, he borrowed 5 cars. This was one of the 5 he borrowed. And this car was used as the film car. That was its main job. It was also the car that crossed the finish line at the end of the movie. But you can see the camera mounts are still here on the frame. And so we'll show you real quick what that would have looked like. So that's where the mount for the camera would have been when they got rolling footage. It would have mounted on the back of the frame there, and then also up front.
Okay, well, let's go see the other cars. We have time then. And people are asking, why does it have a spare tire?
Yes, we get asked all the time, why does it have a spare tire and why does it have a second seat? So rules are written in a way, the rules for the series would have been written that they wanted production cars to race in this category. But they would have said something like a production car has to have a second seat, a spare tire, and a luggage area. And so Porsche created the inflatable spare, which has been now frustrating Porsche owners since 1970. And then the second seat, you check these boxes, they don't really function, but it's a way to meet the homologation standards of the series.
Okay.
So it's not uncommon to see it. You'll see it again when we get to our 908. They were never really purposeful other than to just check a box.
Okay, and a bit of history on the black, a small, you can tell us on the black one you have.
Oh, the car behind it is a Porsche 962. In Europe, with slight differences, they would have been the Porsche 956. These would, I guess, qualify as Porsche's most successful ever race car. Ours was a Holbert chassis car, number 3. There's a kind of a few variations, but these cars would have run from, say, 1983 to 1994. I believe Hurley won Le Mans M1 in 1994. They were fairly revolutionary because they were ground effects cars. It was Porsche's first ground effects car. So underneath the car, there's actually channels and tunneling that the air goes through. So the faster you go, the more downforce the car generates and the better it handles. But these were probably, I don't know. You see the 917 and you think that was the best car, and then you get to this car and you want to say this. You want to say the same thing. So, but yeah, these would have been, turbocharged race cars. This one was air cooled. A lot of them were air cooled, water cooled heads, air cooled cylinders. So they did different things. AJ Foyt drove this car along with Hurley. It didn't have a huge successful racing career, but it's neat to have an example of it here. We actually have a few cars that AJ Foyt was in. I'm going to list a couple cars for the sake of time. I'll list a couple cars, and if we have questions about them, people can let you know.
Okay, perfect.
This is a 1979 Porsche 935. That was Peter Gregg's last race car. He won the IMSA championship in this car. It may be the most kind of original 935 in existence still. It's never really been restored. A lot of them went on to have all kinds of Kramer modifications made and whatnot to stay competitive. But this one did not. And it's a very kind of meaningful part of our collection. And then we have our 1970 911S or ST. This car is a IMSA championship winning car. We would have won our first IMSA championship in this car as Brumos. Also, that was the year after. Actually, Hurley was in the Vietnam that year. So he would have come back in 1971 when you see the 914 over here to the right of that. But again, that's how we would have raced cars at the beginning, is in tangerine orange. That was Ferry Porche's favorite racing color. And so that's what we would run until the car behind me. The one here is a 1972 Porsche 917-10. So this is like the muscle car of 917s. This car was made for the Can-Am series here in North America. It kind of the same baseline of the motor for the 917K. This had a 5.4 liter turbocharged motor in it. It made roughly 1,200 horsepower, depending on where you have the boost knob. Most famous for these cars was the Sunoco 917-30 that Mark Donohue drove. That car would have made close to 1,400 horsepower. These were incredibly terrifying cars to drive. And if you go back to that question,
1,400 horsepower, that's a lot.
Yeah, yes. And, it's, again, you have your fuel tanks right by the driver. You have, this welded aluminum frame that cracks in all kinds of places. Not many people could drive it. And actually, we go back to the question of who was the better driver. Peter Gregg had ordered this car for himself, and it originally came as a naturally aspirated car. He wrecked it. They sent it back to Germany for repairs. While it was there, he had it turbocharged because that's what all the competitors were doing. It came back. Peter drove maybe one race, and he then told Hurley that Hurley needed to buy the car from him and drive it because Peter couldn't handle it. And Peter actually drove the car successful, and he credits his success in the 91710 for what really got him on the map at Porsche to drive their Porsche factory prototype cars.
Okay. That's great.
So that car would have gone 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds, 0 to 100 in about 3 seconds.
The weight of this car, do you know the weight?
This one should be right at 1,800 pounds. But let me just check. 1,628 pounds.
Wow. 1,628 pounds.
With a 12-cylinder motor.
That's only the engine. They're on top of the engine.
There's not much else there. So they call those the Widowmaker.
Those are true Widowmakers.
Yes, we have two 917s in various forms, so you don't see that very often. And it's neat to compare the two, actually. And then we'll move up here to
Another question they're asking. Okay, this one is the 908.
Oh, no question? Okay. This is our Porsche 1968
No, the question was
Porsche.
About the Porsche distribution that you had that you sold it on 2016?
No, we sold our dealership in 2016, yes. The distributorship was sold to, it was sold in 64 when Brundage died. So Peter Gregg bought the dealerships, the distributorship was sold off in 64. And then it was all consolidated to Porsche Cars North America at some point.
Okay.
So yes, we were Brumos Porsche until 2016, and then it became Porsche Jacksonville. Because most manufacturers won't let you use a name other than Porsche with the name of the city it's in. We were already battling with Porsche over the name Brumos, so the people we sold the dealerships to allowed us to keep our name, and they just took the dealerships. Real quick, this is a 1968 Porsche 908. The Porsche 908 was kind of a key point in the evolution to the 917K. Prior to this would have been a Porsche 907. The 907 would have been had a 2.5 liter motor in it. Porsche realized that they needed to develop a 3 liter motor, and so they went to work on it. Metzger designed this motor. It was the first car that Porsche ever built a motor to the limit that was allowed in the series. So the series allowed 3 liters. This is a 3 liter motor, and before that, they had never done that before. Believe it or not, the car, even though it's a 3 liter 8-cylinder motor, it made about 350-ish horsepower, but it only weighed about 1,400 pounds, and did very well on tracks like Nürburgring. This won Nürburgring in 1968, but 907s won Nürburgring from 68 to 71, and again in either 1980 or 81. So they had a really long life. They had a few different forms. They had a long tail version, a short tail like ours, a K. There were spiders without the coupe top.
They were.
But this was an early car. Yes. This is the essence of Porsche to me. Just something that's extreme. If you're light, you don't have to be overpowered, and there's such a balance here. It's kind of a beautiful thing. But Vic Elford and Joe Siffert won Nürburgring in 68 in that car. And I mentioned it last time. It really is fascinating. They used to have Le Mans starts for those races. And so all the drivers would line up on the pit wall. And then when the green flag waved, they would all run to the car and jump in and go. Well, Joe Siffert started the race. He jumped in the car. Well, he never buckled in, so he took off before everyone. He went from 27th after qualifying to 2nd when he left the pits. And then he set 2 consecutive lap records. So I don't know when he had time to fasten his seatbelt, especially on Nürburgring.
But he did it right.
He made it. Yes. But that's why Porsche keys, important point, most people probably know, but that's why Porsche keys are always on the left, because when you would run to the car, you could turn the key with one hand and engage the shifter with the other.
Correct. They're asking, is it 914 a 4 or a 6-cylinder?
914 6. 914
6. Okay. And the 356 is
the 356
pre-A, right?
is an early one. Yes, it's a 1953 356 pre-A bent window coupe. And so it's not very many of these super early cars were built. This was a project that started before Bob Snodgrass passed away. It was, I think I saw this car on a rotisserie for like 10 years. So we just finished it before we moved in. And it's really kind of quite special.
Amazing, the quality of the cars you have over there.
Thank you. So with that, I'll ask questions about Porsches now, and then we're going to kind of evolve the tour.
This is a 1953, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask, ¿alguien tiene alguna pregunta? ¿O seguimos? I think we can get going.
Okay.
And as
we're going to make our way back to the workshop real fast, but I do want to show you the other half of what we are, and it's actually a neat tour to do. Hannah left me. We're kind of going in reverse order here, but these are our open wheel cars, our Indy cars.
Okay.
Half of the collection are these open wheeled Indy cars, half are the Porsches. And so we have a whole another side of cars that you could do a whole other tour on over here. And so these cars explore the real early history of automotive racing. I didn't mention it earlier, but we prefer race cars to any other cars.
We can do like a quick walk around through the car so we can see
sure,
it. And that's
people would find that interesting.
And go back to
we'll just do like a quick walk, and then we'll go back to the workshop.
Correct.
You'll see on the left and right as we're walking right now, we're parallel with the camera. These are Miller race cars. Harry Miller was based out of LA. He started building car parts and doing repairs. And then he ultimately became one of the best race car manufacturers for Indy in the world in the 1920s. If you wanted to win the Indianapolis 500, you did it in a Miller car. We probably have one of the world's, if not the world's, biggest collection of Miller cars. This car here that we're looking at might be the most significant car in the building. It's pretty much the grandfather of all high performance cars. It was the first to have dual overhead camshafts, 4 valves per cylinder, first race car to have 4-wheel brakes. All of the technologies that we kind of take for granted today, many of them were invented on this car by 3 drivers from Peugeot. It's a 1914 Peugeot L45. It's a 4.5 liter inline 8-cylinder engine, built for the French Grand Prix, and then ultimately ended up in the United States. And this is what inspired Harry Miller to go from a carburetor builder to a race car builder. So we'll make our way.
They're asking a question over here. They say, Mr.
Sure.
Hubert Brundage bought the last Roadster America, the first speedster, back in 1952 with aluminum instead of aluminum.
Yes, I've heard of that car.
Do you have that car over there, or?
We do not have that car here. No. But I saw that car at Amelia Island at the Concours this year. I think it's someone. I think someone from Georgia or South Carolina. It's in a private collection. Yes.
Okay.
I think it belongs to someone in Georgia or South Carolina, but I don't remember. But I do remember seeing it this year.
Okay, so
I'm going to go ahead and open the door. Okay.
Correct. This is a quick walk through the more classic cars you have, and back to the.
I'm going to open the workshop door.
Okay, here we are on the workshop.
I believe I mentioned it, but if I didn't, all of our cars here except for 2 run. And those 2 we have stuck to the ceiling for no other reason than
the F1.
We thought it would be fun. One is
That's why they don't run.
One is a F1 car. I think it's from about the year 2000. The other one was Casey Mears' kart series car. The Formula One car never ran. It was more of a backup slash press car, something they would have had, outside of a hospitality tent. But the kart car there ran with Casey Mears for a season, and ended up with us. They took all the running gear out, so it makes it very light and easy to put up there.
And this is where you work on your cars.
Correct. So this is where we do the work to all the other cars to keep them running, and where we store our transporters and those things. So to the left here, if you want to show the Alpha. So this is one of, if you're looking at kind of tiers of collector cars, this is probably a top tier collector car. It's a 1939 Alfa Romeo 8C 2900, Superleggera, super light.
Okay.
This is one of, I think, about 8 made, and is absolutely unbelievable. It's got two mechanical superchargers.
And it's gorgeous.
But very rare. This car actually lived in South America, in Argentina, for many years. It was raced there. At one point, it got separated. The chassis got separated from the body, and the body ended up in Europe, in England, and the chassis was in Argentina. A restorer slash collector found the chassis, was looking for a body. He found the body in England. He puts the body on the chassis, and believe it or not, all of the holes that line up to mount the body to the chassis match perfectly. So they actually found the actual body to the chassis.
Wow. Great story. They're asking about the story. What's the story with the Rally 911 that you have over there?
Yeah. So this is Lee Keen. It's a Lee Keen Safari car. It's actually a 1983 911 SC. That we bought a donor car for, and Lee Keen actually was one of our race car drivers in our last GT team from 2011, 12, and 13. He's gone on to build these kind of rally-inspired safari cars. So he built this car for us. Goldcrest Motorsports in Atlanta helps tune the motors. So you get a higher suspension, different wheels. He does work to the, cosmetic work to the interior. It's just a real blast to drive. If you Google Brumos Safari car, we have a great video out on YouTube. It'd be fun to check out where Lee gets it real dirty and does fun stuff in it.
Yeah.
But other than that, there are more things we'd like to admit that we do just for fun.
A key project. Yeah. Yeah, I see the 959 back on the.
Yeah, so let's go look at the 959 real quick, just because. So this is the car we were talking about earlier. This car belonged to Dr. Helmut Bott, who was the head of R&D for Porsche. So he was developing this car. And for those of you who don't know, the purpose of the 911 the purpose of the 959 was basically to save the 911. So they were creating technologies in this car that they then could use on production cars that would make them relevant again and more reliable and faster. So this car was the first Porsche to have all-wheel drive. This car actually had height adjustable suspension, 4-wheel individual ABS, composite materials in the body, Kevlar, different other composites. It was a 200-mile-an-hour car. It was Porsche's first 200-mile-an-hour road car, and it was really quite special. Now, it has a huge rear bumper cover, so you never get to see these things. So I thought it might be neat for everyone to see. The motor is just a little, was it 2.5 liter, 2.4? It's a small little 911 base motor. Little turbochargers. You have your distributor there. But a couple of the special things that you'll see are, where is it? I don't know if you can see here. So there are a couple 959s out. There's a 959K Comfort and Sport. This is a Comfort. If this were a Sport, you'd have this mounted here, so you lower the car. It's part of the A-arm. And then also, you would have another set of spring shocks here. This is where the air suspension is in our car. But if it were a Sport, you would see another set of the springs. We'll go back here to show this instead of that one. Also, as I mentioned, it was a height adjustable car. So there's actually about 6 of these. They're like accumulator balls, but there's a nitrogen system in the car. This would store pressurized nitrogen in it, and if you wanted to, say, raise the car, it would distribute that nitrogen out and push the car down. But it's just something I've never seen before, and it's fairly interesting.
It's amazing. Very interesting.
Does anyone have any 959 questions while we're up under her?
Let me see. ¿Alguien tiene preguntas del 959 o sobre el 959? Any questions on the 959? I don't think
Okay.
so.
So we have it apart because when we got the car, in order to bring it in the United States, it had to be federalized, which required the car to have catalytic converters. Well, the catalytic converters make everything very, very hot. And the exhaust goes right up under the rear bumper and everything's tucked in and the car doesn't run right. So we've had enough time pass where we no longer need catalytic converters on the car. And we are replacing the exhaust system with a factory exhaust system in hopes that it runs better.
Okay. Oh, that's the rear bumper.
And then real quick, we were asked about where we exercise our cars. This is our chassis dyno here, which is basically a treadmill for cars. And yes, we can bring them in. This will go up to 170 miles an hour if they wanted to. But you can get different horsepower measurements, torque measurements. But then also mainly for our purposes is we can tune them and run them before we go to an event or a track.
Some were asking why some of your cars have the 59 number on the sides.
That's traditionally been our racing number. Peter Gregg picked that number in 1967, and it's something that's stuck with us ever since. And so I'll show you where it came from, or a model of where it came from. Makes it easier. So Peter was in the United States Navy. He was a naval intelligence officer. And in that job, he would have flown on to aircraft carriers. One of them he flew on was the USS Forrestal. And that had a hull number. The boat number was number 59. Yeah.
So that's why we have 59 on the 911s.
Yes.
Perfect. You have an Autobot over there. Last time it wasn't over here.
Yeah, that's the Bumblebee from the movie Transformers, and that's another one of those things. I don't know why we got it, but it's made entirely out of auto parts, and people love it. We make sure to put a mask on him, and then
so he stays safe. Also,
yeah.
They're asking, what's your favorite car on the entire collection? If you could,
I would have to say two. I have to pick two. I can't pick one. Our 1914 Peugeot, the one that we looked at on this side, and then I would have to say our 550. Some of them you connect with emotionally and you don't know why, and those are the two I have kind of an emotional relationship with.
Well, Nice selection then.
Thank you. So for me, that's all I have
Okay.
kind of prepared. So I will follow your lead.
Okay, do we have any questions? ¿Tenemos algunas preguntas de lo que hemos visto hasta ahora o algo
Would
que
like,
decirle, señor Brandon?
like to see something else?
O si quieren ver algo específico.
Brandon and Domingo, I think we have seen lots of beautiful things. It will be hard to sleep tonight after having seen these wonders and not being able to touch them or drive them. But I wanted, in the name of all the clubs in Latin America. Sorry, stop there. I think there is something for Daniel Necker. There is a little car there, a mini car.
Oh, that's
Daniel
for my
Necker
son.
wants to buy it. That in his kids' collection.
That is my son's. Yeah, we call it the Grayson collection. He's got them
he's
scattered around.
He's starting early to race.
Yes, he's 5. And
Good.
he goes around the parking lot over and over and over again.
Okay, we have a few questions over here. So
Sure.
maybe let me try to ask a few of them as quickly as possible.
Go ahead, Domingo.
Okay, they say, what's the more fun car to drive from the collection?
They're all
Typical
different.
question.
I think they're all different. I think it would depend on what mood you're in or what you're trying to do. I think day to day. We do have a 918 Spider that I find to be one of the most fun cars to drive. If I'm just doing road driving. Yeah, that's on YouTube as well. Track driving. I love our old open wheel cars. They're really, really fun. You can't pick. It's like,
it's too difficult.
They're just too different. If they were all the same.
History. Each model has its its own story. They're fun
and
to drive.
They all have their own personality. So I think that, to me, that's the most fun thing, is when you can drive a car enough to get to know the car on a personal level, when you get to understand it. And to me, that's the most fun thing to do. I know that doesn't really answer the question, but that's what I enjoy. Yeah.
We get the idea. Another question is Brumos racing actually in the IMSA?
We were at certain times in history. So most recently, from 2003 to 2013, we were in Grand Am, which became IMSA or IMSA, but they were separate at that time. Early on in the 1970s and 80s, yes, we were IMSA, and also in early 90s.
Okay. Another question, was the 959 brought to the US with the Bill Gates Act or afterwards?
Unfortunately, after. So when we first got it, it sat at the port for 2 years, and then we finally did everything that it needed to become what they call federalized so that we could bring it in. And not too long after that, Bill Gates got the Show and Display Act, and you could bring them in if you.
2 years. You had to spend 2 years with the car.
And all kinds of money. But I guess hindsight. But that was a great thing that he did, because it allows, there were significant cars that could not come into the country because of that, and so. And the irony is they're not going to be driven anyway.
Correct.
Like the Nissan Skyline, I think, is just now old enough to come in, which I think, our car enthusiast world has been very excited about. But they have to be about, I think, 30 years old.
30 or 25, something like that.
25. There you go.
Do you have to, what model is the orange 911 you have over here at the?
It's a 911S. It's a 1973 911S. That would have been Peter Gregg. This was actually one of Peter Gregg's personal cars. But he loved what was called the Sportomatic transmission. Sportomatic was like
Tiptronic, but
a little bit. So when you put your hand on the shifter knob, it somehow it senses it senses it closes a circuit and engages a clutch.
Okay.
So Peter really enjoyed it. I've driven it. I don't mind moving my foot.
You don't mind pressing
I don't
the clutch.
understand the advantage. Yeah, I mean, if you're already going to be moving the gear shifter, I don't really get it. But
correct. They're asking, when did Peter Gregg race in Mexico with Rebecca and Rojas, and with what cars?
That's one of the things. A Brumos book is coming out soon, and I hope to find out more about that. Because a lot of what Peter would do is also he would sell his cars to Mexico or prep cars from Mexico. And so there's a lot to that story. I don't know what year he would have gone there. It was probably multiple years, but I know he had a close relationship. He had close relationships there. And like I said, cars were either sold directly, prepped, and then sold directly as new to Mexico, or, when we would finish with a car, some of them would go there. But there's a strong connection that I'm looking forward to learning more about.
Okay, and another question: can we see the engine on the Alpha 8C?
Let me see.
I don't know. I think that's all the questions for today. I don't see any more.
The Alpha is one of the few cars I get scared touching.
Wow.
So this is
like brand new, like out of the assembly line.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
the condition.
So the carburetors and fuel pumps were all race derived. Like our fuel pumps, we had an issue, and we just spent weeks repairing them because you can't find them anywhere. They were built for Maserati race cars.
So I think that's the last question. So we're ready to wrap this up.
Well, good.
Brandon, thank you very much. If you come to Latin America, to any of the countries in Latin America, please let us know. It would be nice to have you with us and show you.
The thought has crossed both mine and Hannah's mind, I think, at this point. I want to see your all's cars.
You have to come and see them. To the members
thank you so much.
To the members of the club, thank you very much for participating today. I think this has been one of our most wonderful experiences. Thank you for Domingo for making it happen and for acting as our moderator today. And again, not only to you, but for your team as well, Brandon, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're very honored. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us, and hopefully we talk again soon.
Thank you for the opportunity again.
We will send
and
you
can, in the meantime, you can find us on social media at the Brumos Collection on Instagram and Facebook. And please check out our Lee Keen Safari Car video on YouTube. It's pretty fun.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
All of you.
Thank you.
Nos vemos. Buen fin de semana. Adiós.
Bye, Hannah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Adios.